For today's video, I decided to sign up for a $20,000 qualifier, a big tournament in Ottawa, but my main goal was not to qualify, but to cheese as many Korean pro players as possible. If you've watched my channel before, you would know that's one of my all-time favorite hobbies, so I couldn't resist the opportunity to, well, wouldn't really frame it that negatively per se, but to see if I could root a couple of pro players' days, because it's always quite funny when you can do it with the memes. First matchup is against Percival. Percival might be a player that a lot of you don't know. It's a very strong Korean Terran, but he's someone that came up more recently. I want to say around 2020, maybe even later than that. So many of you are not going to be as familiar with him if you're more used to like the OGs, if you will, of the Korean pro scene. But yeah, he's a very strong Korean Terran player. I think he was about 6.5k MMR on the Korean server. I saw that he beat Cure recently, who has been the best Korean Terran of the past year, even surpassing Maru. So yeah, incredibly strong. And then there's me, Cheese Maniac, as my ID is on the NA server, doing silly goofball builds, and somehow we're gonna have to get a dub here. Now, I did have a couple of ideas. If you guys saw the recent patch notes or my last couple of videos on the patch, you'd probably have a good idea of what my favorite unit's going to be. It is indeed going to be the Banshee, especially in Terran versus Terran. I'm not sure if I did mention it that he's a Terran player, I think, right? Yeah. I really do like Banshees. I already kind of like them as a surprise unit. So let me kind of sketch for you how TVT usually works. Most times, Terran players will go for a somewhat subpar opening when it comes to the economy, just to put more aggression on. So you'll go for a double gas opener, you make Reaper Hellion, and then you expand. Then the way you defend stuff is you make one Cyclone and you get Ravens. The one Cyclone pretty much shuts everything down. Raven offers the detection as well as interference matrix for siege tanks. And that way you're perfectly safe. But then, if you show up with 2 Banshees instead of 1, you can get on top of the Cyclone and kill it before anything happens. For this game, I opened up with this Marauder cheese, which is a build that's... You might have seen me do it before. It's a very crazy build that no one does. But here, it starts getting hectic right away. I proxied the Marauders in my natural, hoping he would scout. He didn't actually scout, so that mind game didn't work. And now, as you can see, we're in a very awkward spot where 2 Reapers are going to kill absolutely everything in my base, and I only have 2 Marauders and 1 Hellion on the other side. You would think it's definitely not going to be enough, but usually you don't have that many units early on. He's going to lose that extra Reaper, and as you can tell, his factory is not producing a unit. We're going to get in here with the 2 Marauders and the 1 Hellion. As you see in the minimap, his Reapers are still doing crazy amount of damage. I did make a Cyclone in the meantime, by the way. That Cyclone is now on the way to deal with those Reapers in the main base. Hellion actually survives past the bunker. Now we're into his main base. Now SCVs are pretty good against Marauders. Trying to do the best micro I can, as you can see, putting those red HP units backwards. Actually getting a lot of freaking value here. I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily expect 2 Marauders and 1 Hellion to do that much damage. But in the end, here we are. I think I saw I had 5 SCVs on my main mineral line just now. I do have my orbital command finishing faster than my opponents, and that is very good news. But now we're in a bit of an awkward spot, right? Because we traded all of our units. As far as I know, I have a Cyclone, just 1 unit, that's all I have. And my opponent had 2 Marines, one of which was 1 HP. I can't really move across with this Cyclone, because if I do and he has a Cyclone out, if he's on the high ground, I will just lose the game instantly, because I don't really have money to keep building stuff, really. I'm making a second Cyclone now in case he was going to go for 2 Cyclones as well. And now I'm going to go for Banshees behind it. Now, these kind of games always get extremely awkward, because you just, like, it's... Genuinely, I think it's quite impossible to tell whether you are winning or losing. You guys tell me right now what you think the situation of this game is. You might have an idea. You might think that my opponent's ahead. You might think that I'm ahead because we both lost like all of our workers, but I had the CC a bit faster, got my Cyclone a bit faster. Maybe he has 10 more workers than me. It's really hard to tell, right? And that's why, you know, you can't really make the decisions perfectly anymore. For the most part in StarCraft 2, you can, right? Like, you have your build down to a T, you know, if you see this, you can make that. In games like this, that's all out of the window, and you just kind of have to go on instinct. Do I make SCVs or do I make units? It's, yeah, I mean, you just kind of have to do the best you can, balance it out. Here, I decided to go for 2 Cyclones, then skip on that factory production completely. and focus on going for Banshee plus Banshee speed. I did not get Cloak here on those Banshees. I went for speed. Whether that's the good choice really depends on what my opponent does. Let's say my opponent plays without a Raven, then this would have been the wrong choice, because, you know, he would have to use scans that he might not even have against my Banshees, and in the worst case scenario for him, I could win the game instantly. Let's say he did go for a Raven, and he does the one Cyclone thing that I mentioned earlier, then my two Banshees with speed are going to kill the Cyclone, get into the main base, and his Ravens are not going to be able to catch up to their auto turrets. So there's really a lot of different scenarios that can happen, and it's kind of hard to tell. Right now I'm moving out my Banshees and I'm kind of checking with my Cyclones a little bit. You can get very unfortunate in a game of StarCraft. Like, it is a skill-based game, of course, but you can get very unfortunate. If his medevac, for whatever reason, was still lingering there, he might have just found my Banshees right away, and that would have been pretty tragic. So I decided to, minimize that chance a little bit. Check with my Cyclone and then move across with my Banshees. Now, this is a very important moment. What are we going to see? We see a medevac there, which is already pretty bad news for us, because that means indeed that the Cyclone is still going to be at home. This was, a little bit unlucky here. If that medevac wasn't there, I can tell you about what I see right now. These Banshees would have gotten probably 10 to 15 SCV kills and both survived. Unless his Vikings were about to finish, but it seems like they weren't. So that was a pretty good moment for him. But since I didn't stop making Banshees, it means that we're still gonna have that, really sick group of two Banshees where you can one-shot workers, and it's very important. I'm trying to get a nice position here at the front. I can see his army on the minimap. I think I just realized as well. This was actually a little bit of an unfortunate moment. I wonder if you guys saw it. If you go back in the VOD, you can see it. I did unsiege that tank in time, but we're playing on the US server, so the delay didn't allow my tank to unsiege in time before it kicked in, and that lost me a very important tank. I do still have 4 Cyclones, which, in the right situation can pick up 4 units for kind of free, basically there. Now, he's getting very, very close to my base, and I honestly just have to go for it. I do have Cloak on the Banshees as well. I'm trying to split my Cyclones as good as possible. His tanks did not focus fire the Cyclones. He went for the SUV, so we're going to get very close to cleaning this up. Got another Banshee coming in, but Vikings are extremely good against those units on the ground as well. He's going to pull off a good move, drops the Viking on top of the Cyclone, and that is it for game number 1. Game number 2 is where the fun really begins. Initially, I was thinking I might do something with the Marauder opening multiple times, but I decided to not be too stubborn. It didn't work last game, although I watched the replay. Actually, I'm curious about this now. Just to, what I said last game about what you guys thought of the situation. I'm curious how many of you were right. In that exchange in the early game last game, we actually ended up pretty even. The moment where I didn't get any damage done with my Banshees, the really unfortunate moment with the medevac, where I lost one of my Banshees to the Cyclone and then he was able to push. I couldn't unsiege my tank because of the ping. Those were actually the deciding moments. After that start, somehow it was even. Apparently we killed the exact same amount of workers pretty much. He was a little bit ahead in tech and I had my base a little faster, so that was funny. But anyway, it didn't work. I didn't want to be stubborn, so this game I wanted to do something else. Now, I had an idea already. But this idea, I mean, you guys are going to freaking love this. I'm 100% sure. This idea was so absurd that I really didn't even know if it could work, like, resource-wise, because it's going to sound extreme. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a hint already. It's not going to take that long to come to fruition anyway. But let's just say it might have something to do with Banshees, okay? So the opening I went for here is a very standard double gas. I decided to not scout too much. I mean, when you play double gas, it's kind of... It's a build where you already don't have too much money. If you play against someone that's really cheesy... In Korean Terrans, in all honesty, they are quite cheesy. So against those, you do usually have to be careful. But here I was like, you know what? Good micro, and I should be able to keep myself safe, at least decently. Now, Reaper and SCV are going to come in here. This is where I felt a little bit of pain. So let me guys tell you a bit about how the ping system works when Europeans play against Koreans. Is that half the games are on the central server. Yeah, a central US server, excuse me. And half the games are on the West server, and the ping difference is about 50. So the last game was on Central, and then this game was on West. So like the first moment where I had to micro my Reaper, it was like surprisingly laggy. So that could have ended very badly, but I just retreated. I sacrificed the SCV on my natural. Didn't lose it because he didn't go for it, but I was like, you know what? It's not worth losing the game over trying to somehow, what's the word I'm looking for? I was going to say relinquish, but that is not the word I was looking for. Save the situation, I guess. Salvage, that's the word I was looking for. Salvage the situation. Just sacrifice the SCV and we'll play from there. Now, here is the build, guys. Proxy double starport. So the reason why I'm doing this is because Banshee speed now builds faster and it builds the same time as Cloak. So what you can do is you can hit with Cloak and speed, obviously provided that you know, have 2 tech labs, otherwise you can't make both of them. Now this was actually quite nice for me. I took the initial damage on my Hellion because I split my units at the wrong time, but managed to turn it around on him, actually sniped one of his units instead, so that was quite good. And I was pretty happy with this, not trade, but just the information I gathered there in general. Because the fact that he went for 5 units like me means that if he were to go for something like a Cyclone drop or a Liberator, that would be delayed. And that's the kind of stuff that I don't want to play against because let's just say I'm spending my money on something else. It's no big deal, right? But I'm spending my money somewhere else right now. 2 starports in the corner, Banshee speed is going to be built, and then Cloak. And this is, I mean, I didn't really think about this specific part at the time. But normally, if you proxy a starport and you make one of the upgrades, so let's say you proxy 1 starport, you make Cloak and 2 Banshees, you're gonna hit with 2 Banshees and Cloak, right? With this build, you're gonna hit with 4 Banshees with Cloak and Speed. Like, it sounds ridiculous. It hits so fast. If your opponent is relying on Marines and Cyclones to deal with it, I think they might just die. If they have Vikings, obviously Banshees don't shoot up. Okay, that's a different story. But most of the time they're going to go for 1 or 2 Cyclones, Medevac, Ravens, that kind of thing, a lot of Marines. And Marines can never catch these Banshees, okay? Marines, I mean, if they surround them, sure, they might kill one of them, right? But they should never be able to catch up to them. And Cyclones should be very snipeable. Now, obviously, you have to keep in mind that there's micro on both sides. So what he could do is lock on with his Cyclone and then pull the Cyclone back to the crowd of Marines so he can't snipe the Cyclone, stuff like that. It's not, you know, it's never that black and white, right? There's always micro on both sides, new strategies. Maybe for some reason, someone already did this against him and he's like, haha, his main base is too empty. I'm gonna make freaking turrets. I don't know, right? A lot of things can happen. But I was getting pretty excited about this. It's 5 minutes 38 and I have 4 Banshees with Cloak and Speed. I mean, depending on the map, you could even proxy this closer. Now, this is a very pivotal moment here, so I'm going to go in with these Banshees. These Banshees are pretty much based on what we've seen. That was a crazy find by him, by the way, to actually go back with those. I guess he was maybe looking for a counter drop. I can explain more on this later, but anyway, I'm probably gonna do damage with these Banshees, right? But at the same time, he was moving out, and I can't really stop that move out once it goes to my base. So what I'm trying to do is position my army forward, so he's forced to siege up slowly, and he cannot reach my base that fast. And now, this is the power of the Banshee, guys. They are too fast with speed, so if he splits up his units like what he did earlier, you can just do damage. There you go. He tried to scan, and it just doesn't work, right? Like, he can't kill these Banshees with Marines. They get away. That scan is pretty much wasted. He already lost a tank, lost auto turrets now too. And once again, the Banshees are too fast. He had to send his Raven and Vikings back to the front, and then my Banshees just go back. I have 2 more Banshees coming in from the proxy. There's now 4 Banshees actually ravaging his eco. If you look at his base, you can tell that he's in absolute shambles. I'm even gonna snipe that tank. Well, I don't feel like getting pushed. Might as well grab it on the way out. And I'm still at 91 supply. I don't know what his supply is right now. I would guess that it's probably like 65 or something, and I'm on 92. I think I still probably have 4 Banshees on the map, considering that the proxy... I can actually see them, yeah, down there. They're not being used right now. They're below the starports. 5 Banshees on the map, seems like. And he just can't move out. If he moves out with the ground army, my Banshees are gonna kill it. If he sends his air force to the front, my Banshees are gonna kill his base, and there's no way he's gonna be able to do enough. I mean, I focus so much on the air, and you can still see that my ground army is way stronger than his. If his air army was here, I would not be able to do this, actually, because then he could drop down turrets, or maybe even use interference matrices on the tanks, depending on how much energy he has. But since they were waiting for the Banshees, I could get in there, get a really good position, more energy being wasted. Well, I mean, he did get the Cyclone and maybe a Marine, I'm not sure, but the energy is very important, and it doesn't feel like that got enough value from him. Now, once again, I just have a casual 4 Banshees over here. I decided to go for 2 extra starports. This might sound crazy, right? Because I already have to. Why would I need more? But it's going to be pretty hard to actually catch up in Viking count. So the only way I thought I could lose this is just by pure air control. He pushes me at some point. Let's say he gets turrets. This is hilarious, by the way. He finished a turret and I can just kill it because 4 banshees do so much damage. That's quite funny. He probably thought there was no way he would ever lose that turret. But let's say he gets turrets up in his base, maybe like 1 in the mineral line, 2 in the production, 1 in the other mineral line, and he pushes across. I don't have that many tanks. He has interference matrices. Can get pretty tough, right? So I just decided to go for 2 extra starports. All I have to do now is really just make tanks for my 1 factory, start making Vikings from every starport, and realistically, he shouldn't be able to win. I'm thinking about this right now. Very interesting for the future and for everyone that wants to copy my builds. This build looks like it would transition fantastically well into battlecruiser style. And this is not even entirely me being a goofball. At some point, I don't think it's meta anymore, but at some point it was really a pretty common build in the meta to go for a super campy triple starport into battlecruiser play. So you wouldn't go like mass banshee or something, you know, the more ridiculous styles that I like to do. But you would go for Viking control, then you would go into BCs, and you basically just skip your way forward into the late game. Like you have the mech and the BCs and the Vikings already, and if you stabilize long enough, the other guy's gonna be maxed way before you, but if you survive, then you just gotta head into the late game and you're gonna have an Omega army and you'll be able to kill them, basically. That's the idea. And this build could actually transition really, really well into that. Maybe I could go for like a second factory and a 3rd starport instead of going up to 4 starports, and in a moment I can, you know, I get my 6 gases up, I'll go for a fusion core. Now this is also a thing, by the way, he has a missile turret, very cool, but he's still gonna lose every single SCV on the outside there. He's gonna lose the SCVs making the barracks, and this is incredibly painful. And this build, really, it looks freaking good. Like, strategically, of course, like, I know these outplays are gonna look absolutely beautiful to you guys, because they looked absolutely beautiful to me, but I also just have so much supply. It didn't really feel like this was an incredibly inefficient build or something where I had to sacrifice so much to do this. Obviously, this build is also going to have its weaknesses, like certain attacks could totally mess me up, right? I'm sure. But I don't know, like he did a pretty standard opening. And look how many Vikings I already have, by the way. Puts an anti-armor missile on my Vikings. Just so you guys know, it doesn't really matter, to be honest, because I don't think it even makes the Vikings die faster to other Vikings. The Marines do more damage and the other turrets. The Vikings, I think, still take the same amount of hits. I retreated momentarily to not die to the other turrets there, and now I can kill everything with my Banshees. And that is game number 2, done and dusted in a beautiful manner. The final game of this best of 3 is going to be on Ultra Love. Now this game I once again decided to go for the fake proxy. Same thing as I did in game number 1, but this time we're not going to be going for the proxy Rax Marauder. Very simply just because it failed in game number 1. I still think it's a very cool build. It could totally work against any player depending on their style and how they scout and how they react to what they scout, blah blah blah. But it didn't work in game number 1, so I'm gonna do something different. But I do really enjoy playing mind games. So one thing that I like to tap into is just pattern recognition, right? So I've talked about this a couple times before, but let's say you play against the same build 20 times in a row. At some point, you're gonna recognize the strategy even without really knowing why. Like, you might not scout a certain building, but you're gonna see the way certain units move, or maybe how buildings are placed, blah, 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 right? Everything can matter. That's going to help you recognize builds. So what I like to do is I like to mess with that a little bit. I like to put my buildings in a similarly weird way, but then do a different build. Or, for example, this first supply depot I built, it also screams proxy racks. It's just like a little detail that I like to add in there. The reason why it screams proxy racks is because when you go for a proxy barracks, like a real one, I mean, not a fake one like this, you don't really care where you make the depot because the game is gonna end early. So I really tried my best to sell everything I could, and I don't know what reaction he had exactly because I don't have map hacks, but even if I made him confused, that's already a pretty big dub. Another thing to remember, of course, sometimes you don't need like an actual reaction in game, as in, let's say, someone changes their build up entirely or they make a bunker. But just the fact that you make them a little nervous, keep them on their toes a little bit, stuff like that already matters, you know? Like, maybe he didn't send out his Reaper because he was scared where normally he would have. Just stuff like that. Now, you might have noticed I send out an SCV to the left side of the map.
Not enough minerals.
This time, We're not going to be going for the Banshees, at least not right away. But we are going to go for a proxy starport. So this is pretty much going to be a double fake. I tried to pretend, or I pretended that I was cheesing. At some point he figured out that I wasn't. But then we're still going to go for a later follow-up cheese by going for the proxy starport. Point of the proxy starport is pretty much to make a liberator initially. I could do a lot of things after that, like go for Banshees. Could make Ravens, more Liberators, a lot of things, right? But first of all, I'm gonna hit with a bunch of Reaper Hellion at the front. And then the Liberator is going to arrive slightly faster in the main base because it's proxied. That's pretty much the idea here. Now, the thing that I'm scared of is pretty much what happened in game number 1, that I moved out and then Reapers jumped into my main base, because after these Reaper Hellion, or this entire cycle of Reaper Hellion, which is going to be 5 Reapers and 3 Hellions, I'm going to be making add-ons, or at least an add-on on my factory, and I'm not going to have any good units against Reapers. So I'm trying my best to scout around, make sure that nothing's going to be jumping in my main base. If he still does, then that timing is just incredible. But at least I did my best, right? Like, you can minimize the chances. And now we're going to go in with the Reaper Hellion. Let's see what he has. He has a Cyclone. Cyclones actually do die pretty fast to Reaper Hellion, as you can see. So we kill Cyclone number 1. Now at this point we did lose, I believe, 3 units already. No, it's 2 units that we lost, so we can't quite kill the Cyclone as convincingly. So I'm just trying to do as much damage as I can between lock-ons. If you can kill every single Cyclone, I wouldn't say it's GG, but you should find yourself into a pretty good spot, because then they don't have a good counter to the Liberator anymore. That's basically the idea here. You deal damage to the Cyclone, or you keep it busy, and then you go in at in the main with the Liberator. Now here, for a second, I thought the Cyclone was gone, but then it was still in the main. Now here, I'm not quite sure. Look at this, guys. We actually just got owned by the patch. This is a patch now that a lot of you might not even have looked at, because it seemed so small. They reduced Liberator sight range by 1. So I couldn't shoot all of the patches that I was sieging besides 1. I probably would have killed, I want to say, 3 more workers there if that wasn't the case. So the patch actually there got us a little bit. Now, I went for a very cool follow-up idea here. This was freestyled in the moment, but it ended up being freaking genius. Let me explain, right? So on this map, you can siege the natural mineral line from the 3rd base. So what I did is I saved the Liberator, pulled it back around so I could siege his ramp so he wouldn't be able to come down. Then I made the reactor on the starport so I could get Vikings extra early. And then I'm gonna get air control plus a Liberator. And look at this. This is actually, it's disgusting. It's a really, really, really nasty position that he genuinely, he can't break this. He's just not gonna be able to mine from those 2-3 patches for a while. He can't reach the Vikings because, I mean, tanks 2-shot Cyclone, so even taking a little bit of damage is going to be incredibly painful. I still have a very sizable amount of units down the ramp, so if he wants to come down the ramp, that's going to be annoying. He should never be able to catch up in Viking count. Now, I do know that he has an interference matrix, and I don't see the Raven, which means he probably pulled it around somewhere. I got a second tank siege. He does use the interference matrix, but now I have a tank on the low ground. I have 3 Vikings that I can land. Vikings do bonus damage against mechanical, and within, I want to say, 4 seconds, his entire army has disappeared. Let me remind you guys, we are playing against a 6.5k Korean Terran player, and like, this strategy was really disgusting, doesn't even do it justice. Absolutely nasty. Reminded me of Prime uThermal when I had just absolute disgusting builds where I would just wipe someone off the map. The Vikings die, the last Viking is still alive, but it's 1 HP. And just like that, we eliminate Percival from the qualifier. The second series is going to be the quarterfinals against Shin, one of the top 5 Zerg players in the world. Obviously a super difficult match, but I did feel like I had some tricks up my sleeve. I had some builds that I wanted to test against him. So I was quite excited for this one. And always, I get pumped up, you know, like the last series, honestly, it was a fantastic dub. Once again, cannot, you know, understate that. Playing as a 6.5k Terran, a Terran that has beaten the best TVT players in the world. And we honestly kind of dominated. Like, game number 1, we lost for sure, but game number 2 and 3 were very, very dominant. I was pumped up and I was ready for this series. Now, it is kind of hard to keep track of what builds I have done against who at some point, because they might remember games from a tournament like from 2 years ago because there's no one that plays like me that competes on the pro circuit, right? So if I played it against them, they will probably remember it somewhat, and it's kind of hard to tell. Against Shin, I used to have a pretty nice rivalry. I think we were pretty much exactly 50-50, or maybe I had like a slightly better record against him, but it really felt like we were just trading series back and forth, and I was always, you know, doing my weird stuff, sometimes a bit more sensible stuff back then, but I definitely knew that I can't totally get in with my weird stuff. So for this game, I decided to go for Reactor first. This is a build that I'm gonna keep doing. Kind of circling back to what I said in that last game against Percival, where I really like doing mind games and I like to, you know, make it look like I'm doing the same build while I'm doing something different. Reactor first is a strange opening. Pretty much every turn will just open with Reaper. Doesn't matter if it's a 2-base build or a 3cc build or 3-Rex Reaper, right? Whatever. It always opens with a Reaper. I'm gonna do Reactor first mind games. It's not like it's super hard to scout what's going on, but it's just unusual, so they don't really know. Now here I see 2 Zerglings that are a little bit too early, so I imagine that he did do a build like, for example, Extractor Trick Hatchery first, that allowed him to get those Lings out that early. Even if I killed the Lings, he did scout that I had 4 Marines already, which is a little more than I wanted to give away. Ideally, he would see that a little bit later, so, I mean, we can call it even. I'm not quite sure how much I like this. Now, this build is a build that has not been seen on the pro scene before. I've done it in a show match at some point, I remember, and it's going to be the 4 rack. So normally you do this build, you go for 3 barracks. And when I say normally, I mean people don't do this build, but for a little while people were doing it to catch Zergs off guard. They would go for a 3 racks, and then they would go for a stim combat shield timing. What I do is I cut gas as much as possible and then go for the 4 racks. Now this was a pretty bad sign. Link Flood is pretty good against these reactor first builds, but I mean, in the end, it looks like we survived quite nicely. I didn't actually lose any SCVs, I believe, and I mean, he did have to skip out on a lot of drones for that. I do still have a lot of Marines left. It's possible that he made even more links. So all in all, I would, yeah, still pretty much call it even. It could be slightly good for me or slightly good for him because he did kill 4 Marines. And just so you know, when you play Marines, or well, yeah, not Marines in general, but Marine timings against Zerg, either they have Balings or Roaches, or they defend with Queens and Lings. That's actually the most common one. If they defend with Queens and Lings, you need the snowball amount, right? Because the more Marines you have, the less likely it is that Lings can kill you because your ball just gets too big and they don't get that much surface area. It's pretty brutal for them. So shaving off, I want to say 4 Marines or maybe even 5. It could be pretty strong for him, but you can see how many freaking Marines I have with this 4 racks. Combat Shield's gonna finish in 30 seconds. Now this build, you do definitely need to do some damage with it because I have no engineering base for upgrades. I don't have the factory for tanks and medevacs, right? I just plopped it down. So we do need to get some damage done, and that's gonna be a bit harder because now he's going to be completely aware of our build order. So I'm just going to go across with these Marines. I closed the depot in the wall because I kind of thought he would be going for a run-by. Not quite sure if it would have been better to just keep reinforcing, but I mean, it's really hard to tell. Like, again, Zerg, these situations are difficult where you don't have Reaper or Hellions, because I don't know if this guy has 20 drones or 50. Like, you can't know. So that scan was very, very good. The reason why you scan is to see, first of all, how many units they have and how much creep there is. I saw that there were at least, I want to say, 7 Balings there, and that is a very sizable amount of Balings to make against this, so I figured it wouldn't be worth attacking. The problem is that I want to attack, right? Even if this was a 3 racks, I would be perfectly okay with, you know, forcing units and backing off. Since it's a 4 racks, I definitely have to do something. So I decided to send my reinforcements. Obviously, I am transitioning behind it because that's just what you do. But I do kind of want to get some damage done here. It's a lot of Zerglings, unfortunately, for me. Now, I just want to say, before I go in here, that I'm an absolute psycho for doing this, because once again, we are playing on the US server, and I'm going to try to micro against Link Bailing on ping. Which is, I mean, honestly, it's not recommended, guys, but I decided to go in here anyway. Now, it looks like he has a lot of army, but maybe I can target fire those Bailings. I got all of them besides the one on the left side and the one in the middle. I do get the other Bailings, but at this point, my Marine count is thinned enough that he's going to be able to clean it up with the Queens. Now, normally, I would say that this looks like it's GG, and my opponent has won the game. But he did really make a lot of Lings and Banes. He lost a couple queens, but not that many. He lost a couple Creep Tumors at the front, but he did have queens left. I would give him about a, let's say, a 10% advantage here. It's pretty sizable, but it's definitely not game over. I got my Medivacs on the way. Based on how much he had to do to respond to that, I think he might not have prepared his follow-up tech already, so it could be just Ling Bane, right? I think is my 30C on the way yet? I'm actually not... I don't think it is, right? No. Okay, so yeah, with this game I decided to go for a 2-base all-in. 5th barracks is going to be over there. I made double engineering bay, which... Actually, now I think about it, that's another cool mind game I could do. I knew the Overlord is still there, right? Like below my natural on the sneaky pillar over there. What I could have done is make the engineering base in vision of that Overlord, because that would signal that I'm playing a macro game. But what those engineering bays are actually for is so I can get 1-1 faster and hit my final all-in. This is not the kind of game that you really want to transition from, because the only thing I have going for myself, compared to, let's say, a normal economic Reaper Hellion game, is that I already have the tech units that allow you to fight. So normally you don't get stim and tanks and medivacs this fast. Now I do have them. So in the long run, in the macro game, it's not going to be that good for me. But I do have some potential to attack, so I wanted to keep going for it. Now it sucks for me that he scouted that. What I'm trying to do here is I'm circling around. This is ancient Marine tank against Zerg technique, where you never want to go through the middle. The moment you go through the middle, you get surrounded by Ling Bane and you're dead, okay? What you want to do is you want to clear the creep on the extremities and just go around to the furthest possible attackable base. So I thought his base would be on the bottom. In fact, judging by the timing of this base, I think the base might have been at the bottom and he cancelled it. So right now we know he doesn't have a 4th base, which is actually quite good for us. I mean, you know, we are on 2 base, so his eco is still, you know, better than ours, but he also could have been on 4 base, which is kind of what I was expecting. Now, that was unfortunate. I guess it's a little bit of a pathing issue there. Obviously, I didn't want my Marines to move to the middle there, but they did, so I guess... yeah, and maybe I just clicked slightly wrong. One of my biggest flaws, by the way, I'm not quite sure if you guys have noticed that over the years, but I really struggle with pathing on maps. Very often, even when I was still in my prime, I would lose a lot of units just because I wouldn't click exactly right and I would lose units to the pathing there. For some reason, I just assume that my units walk the right way and I don't look anymore, but then, you know, they don't, and then that's painful for us. Now we are going for a big all-in here. 1-1 has finished. We have 4 tanks and 3 liberators, I want to say. So our army is pretty strong. Now this kind of play does have one very strong weakness, and Shin is going to abuse that weakness perfectly. So the reason why this kind of stuff is not as good is because with Creep and with Ling Bane, you can delay the attack forever. I can't stim forward into that. I have to do it methodically. So what you can do as Zerg is you counterattack with Ling Bane. You kind of put a timer on the attack, like I have to go because I'm not going to be able to reinforce, and then you get into fights like this where tanks and libs are not exactly in position. Perfectly done by him, and that's game number 1 going into his favor. Game number 2 is going to be on torches, and on this map I had a very cool build prepared for him. You guys might have seen me play this build before. Actually, I think the specific build I'm thinking about it, I really have not played that very many times, maybe once or twice, but the opening would be Reactor first into the double medevac drop, and then the follow-up that's extremely cool is to play Mass Liberator behind it, which sounds insane. But on this map it can actually kind of work, because both of us spawn on the right side. That lane is covered with rocks and mineral walls, so it's pretty easy to use it as just a fast route for air units. But I mean, I wasn't necessarily sold on the follow-up. I was also thinking about going for a battlecruiser follow-up. At some point, I remember playing against Lambo, one of the strongest European Zergs, and I had a double medevac drop, but then I saved all the units inside. Then I came back into his main base later with a battlecruiser teleport as an escort, and that was an extremely cool strategy as well. But it always really depends on what you scout. I know that Shin does like to attack with roaches, and that does change plans a lot. When you're not playing Banshee, it's pretty hard to deal with roaches without doing anything specific as an adaptation to your build, right? Like, if you just keep going with your Reaper Hellion or whatever, you are gonna die to roaches, so it is never going to be easy. Now, once again, you know, the mind game is there. Reactor first has been established. He scouted that. And now he can't really know whether I'm going to go for the same build or something else until he goes for a follow-up scout. I mean, you can already tell the difference here, right? I went for the factory instead of the extra barracks. I'm going to go for the second gas soon. I was already about to make it, but then I realized I needed the money for my Marines. Marines are going to be at the front again, and for now, everything looks exactly the same for him. I didn't SCV scout like in the first game, position the Marines forward. I'm going to have Marine 3 and 4 as well. So this hopefully is going to get into his head a little bit. Now, I do want to say, you guys are going to see something cheeky coming up. And I have heard about Zergs doing very crazy builds on this map, but I hadn't actually experienced them myself. The only one that I have experienced on this map is a build when I was Protoss and someone mined... It's kind of hard to see because I'm not looking at it, but if you look at the minimap right there on the top, there are gold mineral patches that you can mine out, and I lost the game as Protoss because a Zerg mined them out and then bailing busted me from there. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be afraid of that. I mean, by the way, if you guys want to know, a bailing bust is an extremely good counter to this reactor first stuff, right? You don't need to mine out the minerals for that. In fact, if you would do that, it would just make it less efficient because I wouldn't have a wall off at the front anyway. So if he would go for a bailing bus normally, that'd be pretty scary. If he would do it with the minerals, I think that would actually give us a slightly better chance. Now we're going to swap over the reactor to the starport. We're going to make 2 medevacs. Now this was initially very weird because I saw a lot of slowlings, but then I saw a lot of roaches coming from the top side, and it was more than I had hoped to see. In fact, I hope to see none, but, you know, it was more than I had hoped to see. But that's why I pulled the SCVs from the main base. And as you can tell, it looks tough. But this SCV micro here is very, very good. Like, the roaches were focused on killing the SCVs. My Marines are going to be able to take down a lot. Keep in mind, I do have the double mule behind this, but I can't deny it. This is an absolutely disastrous start. But this is not the end. And we're going to tell you something funny here. I watched a VOD of the caster casting this match after. I like to do that when I play particularly crazy stuff because I like seeing the reactions. And at this point I noticed something very funny in the VOD. There was someone that was very upset at the caster for choosing my match to cast because it was too one-sided and it was going to be lame. And this was the point in the game where he started talking like, yeah, why on earth would you pick this? And if you look at the state of the game, I can spoil you guys. I wasn't sure myself how bad it was. Actually, let me take you through my thought process first, right? Because he mined out my minerals, what I thought is that he expanded in the middle too. That's a gold base to the right middle side of the map. So he expanded there, and I had no idea whether he had any drones there at all, or 0 or 10. Like, I really didn't know. So I wasn't actually sure if I was like even or completely behind, but you're going to be able to see it now, and I was going to spoil it to you guys already. I was indeed deadly far behind. I was, I think, 12 workers against 26. Now, if I had stim with this build, which would have been impossible, by the way, but just imagine that, you know, a magician used his wand and I had stim, would have been a different story maybe, because then I could go into the main base, snipe queens very fast, but since I didn't, it was looking like a pretty tough situation for me. But I definitely did not want to give up, because these kind of games are my strength, right? Like, I get to play weird, it's gonna be chaotic, I get to do some moves, and I like that. I mean, I always talk about this, but I don't like games when you're just following the same pattern and all you can really do is just work on that pattern and get better at it. You know, it's not my favorite thing to do. I like getting crazy, so that's what I decided to do here. After that start, I decided to go for the double liberator. The reason why I went for the double liberator is for 2 reasons. First of all, that gold base that he has is vulnerable. As you can see, I already did damage there. And very, very important little detail here, guys. I noticed that he had only morphed 1 Ravager. If he had morphed 3 Ravagers, completely different story, because with 3 Ravagers you can actually one-shot the Liberators with the Corrosive Bile. Now there we snipe another Queen. These Liberators have 10 kills combined, it looked like, by the way, which is incredible. Like, that's a lot of damage. And I started feeling like we were climbing back already. I mean, it's kind of hard to say that we're completely back, because I wouldn't guess my opponent already... Yeah, actually, we saw it. He already had a lair, he already had an evolution chamber, so his upgrades are going to be way ahead. And I think that we are probably still a little bit bit behind. Not massively behind anymore, but definitely still a little bit behind. Now the Biles missed my Marines, which is nice. I decided to siege the Liberators on top of that so they could shoot drones. That's a Ravager that's gonna die. We have a pretty nice tank positioning, but there, for a second, I thought we would be able to stay, but then I saw 5 more Roaches join up, and I was like, yeah, we gotta get out of there. Managed to unsiege the tank, which is nice. And whether this trade was good, I mean, it's really hard to tell. The most important thing here is that we saved the tank. If you play against Roaches, you need as many tanks as possible. They are so much more important than your Marines. Sorry to the Marine and their families, as always, but it's true. And there we managed to save our tank. The Liberators died, but to be honest, Liberators would not have been super useful anyway anymore. This was crazy, by the way. You guys noticed that? It was basically impossible to grab my Liberator there. Like, you can't see it when it's on that side. I can tell you guys already, I'm gonna struggle with that more in this game. I thought it was pretty insane. I wanted to tell that to the map maker. Completely forgot about it, just reminded myself. But yeah, if you have a Liberator on the right side, you can't see anything. So he's gonna try to push through the middle. It looked like it was an absolute crap ton of Roaches, so I pulled my SCVs. Ended up not being necessary. We do lose 1 tank, but that was definitely worth it for us, I would say. I mean, worth it sounds like we initiated the thing. We didn't, but that was a good trade for us for sure, because we killed a lot of Roaches. He definitely, you know, spent a lot of resources in that, because he built those instead of building more drones, or just morphing more Ravagers, making more upgrades, stuff like that. So that was very, very nice. Here I was trying to find my Liberator again. As you can see, it's completely off screen. Looks a little bit ridiculous. Now, the Liberator there is very, very nice. I can tell you guys one very important detail here that is not a spoiler from after the game or anything like that, but he went for the evolution chamber, and that was a very big problem for me. He's going to be ahead in armor upgrades compared to my attack upgrades, and that's going to make my Marines very, very weak. Marines shoot very often, so you always want to be in a good standing when it comes to the attack upgrades. Here, I think I only just started my engineering bay, or no, I just started my +1, I want to guess. I started a little bit earlier on my natural, but he already has +1 armor, I think, means that +2 armor is probably on the way, and that was a little bit of a painful thing. Now, this Spore Crawler was absolutely god tier, because it manages to shoot down my medevac. If that didn't happen, I would have been able to save more Marines. Now I didn't want to load up extra Marines because I figured the medevac would die. And that was, I mean, it wasn't necessarily bad because we killed, I think, a Queen and maybe a couple drones, which is okay. But yeah, I feel like it could have been a lot better considering he was out of position. Now that was another funny moment because he biled my Liberator, but I couldn't click on it, so I couldn't drag it away. So that was a little bit unfortunate. Now this is the tough part of this game. Or not really specifically of this game, but just of these styles clashing in general. Because you want to move out, but the Roaches can range from transitioning into lurkers, very macro heavy, into being ultra all-in. If you move out too fast, you're gonna go up with 125 supply against 200 and you die, right? So it's always very, very scary. That's why I siege a little bit earlier, because I wanted to make sure that, you know, if he was gonna poke me, he was gonna move forward a little bit, we'd get a nice shot. Now, the reason why I'm moving forward now is because I saw how many Roaches he had in that natural. Sadly for us, we didn't have concussive shells there. That would have netted us a couple of roach kills. Sadly, it didn't. Now, denying this gold base is great, don't get me wrong, but as you can see, it was already mined out, so yeah, it would have been nice to hit a little bit faster. Sadly, that was not going to happen, but, you know, at least we're going to get this base killed, and there's still a couple of gold mineral patches that are going to be denied. Now, at this point, he already has infestors out, and that is a pretty massive problem, because fungals mean you have to be so careful moving forward. You always have to split or fall back, and now it is not just about the fungals anymore. This is very cool, by the way. I love this part. But the microbial shroud was buffed. If you guys don't know, I've heard a lot of Zergs not using this on the ladder. Get on it, guys. Microbial shroud now reduces ranged damage by 50%. All of it, okay? It's like, against Marines, it's like getting +3 armor. Against Marauders, what is it? Like getting +5 armor or something? Like, it's freaking crazy, okay? I don't know if he's researching it. I don't know if he had the money or time. Maybe he spent his gas on a hive instead. But if he went for Microbial Shroud, that's going to be extremely useful. Now, I split my army in advance. You can see the Microbial Shroud on the left side. It's that orange cloud. Those Ravagers are not taking damage on the left side, and this is when I was starting to get scared. I still have a couple tanks in the back, and keep in mind, Bio is actually quite good at kiting this. I also have a couple more reinforcements, and this honestly is starting to look like a little bit of a miracle fight here. It looked like we were about to get swarmed, but somehow we stayed alive. I think what happened there is that he moved forward with the 5 Ravagers on the left side to bio my tank, but he didn't realize that it was still on cooldown on those specific Ravagers. Now he's trying to get on top of my tank on the left side, but I have enough Marauders with slow. Marauders are really annoying against roaches because you can just kite backwards, you manage to snipe the base, and if we're fortunate, which, I mean, not necessarily fortunate, just a situation of the game, right? If we are not wrong about the situation, that means that we have now equalized the economy, because we both have our main base and our natural. It's actually pretty hard to tell who is more mined out. Normally Terran is always more mined out because we have mules, but keep in mind I went down to like 12 to 26 SCVs. Now that is a good fungal, but we can dodge the bios for the most part, which is important, and now we can start doing the kiting again. Look at the siege tank range, by the way. You can see that little indicator over there. It covers the ramp. So this is an extremely nasty position that we can keep forever. I did lose a couple of medevacs to those corrosive biles earlier, I believe, which is painful. But this kiting is going to be very, very annoying for him. Yeah, the biggest problem really is that I haven't clicked on his units for a while. That's not a really good fungal. The infestors have been coming from freaking downtown here, which is unpleasant for sure. But what I'm sure of is that he has better upgrades than me, and he might even have some higher tech hive stuff on the way. So if that's the case, then, you know, if he does survive this, that is going to be a little problematic. Now, this fight, obviously, it looks good. We killed drones, but remember what I said. The tank count is the most important. He reset our tank count, and now we have to back off. And it's hard to tell. At this point, I think the game is probably 5% in our favor, I want to say. I think he has probably started... Either he has the base already, the third base in the horizontal line there, next to his natural, or it's building. It's either finished or it's building right now. I'm not quite sure, and that's going to determine whether we have the advantage or not. Sadly for us, it was ready, but there were no drones there yet, indicating that it only just now finished, or that it doesn't have enough drones to saturate it. Sadly for us, we're only mining from 4 mineral patches right now. So I think my estimation that we're 5% ahead is actually accurate. You would think that maybe we're behind or even because we're just not mining at all. But I believe that our army is stronger. We have the concussor shells. And often when you play roaches, you do still want to keep, you know, a big ball alive. So all you have to do after is start adding spellcasters. Put it this way, if you already have 30 roaches and 10 ravagers, all you have to do is make a couple of infestors to increase that army size. If you lose the ball, you have to make it all again, because 5 roaches with an infestor is not that scary, right? Like, you want to have the ball. And if he's going to go into lurkers, he would either have to do that without making units, or make the safety units first. And all we really have to do is just keep working on the bioproduction and find the correct timing. It's really not going to be easy. As you can tell by the mineral count, is going up extremely slowly. We are quite poor. The main base is not mining. The natural is about to mine out, so I'm going to have to fly that somewhere else. And it's a very tricky situation for sure. I made a sensor tower on the left side. There's actually a little bit of mind games as well, because I figured if I make a sensor tower, I'm gonna look strong. And that's, I'm not even kidding there. If you have a sensor tower at a base, somehow, I feel like it's a very psychological thing. It makes it feel like it's a full base, like a proper base that's saturated, you know? I've had it many times myself. When I play against someone that has a bunch of sensor towers, they feel rich, okay? And my situation in the game feels more desperate, like you have to go for it. And it's really not the case at all, because once again, I think he is probably mining slightly more than me. If I had to guess, at this point, I would think that he already started saturating his base in the top left side. Or not saturating it, just building that base. I don't think he would already have it finished, but I think it's probably building at this moment. Now, it seems like we're actually going to lose a sensor tower to that Zergling, which is pretty silly by me, but it happens. Now, keep in mind, guys, that position I had earlier is still useful. The reason why it's still useful is because that tank covers the ramp. That tank covering the ramp is insane. And now I'm going to go for a move that is absolutely insane, but I think it is really smart, and that's that we're going to run into the main. The tank covers the main ramp. If he goes for it, he has to walk through those tanks. If he doesn't go for it, what you can see right now, he gets surrounded, because my marauders are going to be shooting from the high ground as well. Now, he still has those infestors. I'm going to have to be very careful. I could have done a better job at splitting my units here. I can also see in the roaches that they have tunneling claws now, by the way, which could mean that he either hasn't used it yet, or he has a million roaches in my base. Looking at the minimap right now, it looks like there's about 5 to 10 roaches in my third base. He still has a couple of fungals. Keep in mind, he has better upgrades than me at this point, I believe he has 2-1 or 1-2. That's way stronger because he has 2 armor, which is really good against bio. And I only have +1 attack. These roaches completely deny my mining, and even though it looks like I have bases, I have 0 mining right now. That was it. My opponent is mining from a full base, the 3rd base, probably has 22 drones on it, and I have virtually 0 mining. I think I'm probably mining from 1 mineral patch in my natural or something. So I have to pretty much win with this attack. I do still have 1 tank, and luckily for me, my medevacs do still have energy. Sometimes they run out, but this time I think we actually still have some energy on them. We actually managed to siege the tank, and he used a decent amount of his bios already, so the tank gets 2 more shots off. I think he actually missed that 3rd bio as well, so maybe even 3 more shots off before it dies. My bio can stim on top of the Ravagers. I'm going to try to target them because the drones are obviously not going to hurt me. We are going to kill the drones, and it's starting to look like he does not have the capacity to rebuild enough units. Roaches are coming out, and they're going to be dying one by one. Obviously, the Marauder slow is incredibly painful here, and this was an absolutely legendary comeback. I did not realize before watching the replay how dead we were, but it was not an exaggeration. We were 12 drones against 26. We were completely dead, and this was an incredible comeback. The final game in this best of 3 is going to be on Tokamak, and I am once again going to be playing the reactor first. Now, the last game was truly fascinating. I mean, it really reminded me of how I used to play legit like 10 plus years ago, where I would not even necessarily go for a macro game. I wouldn't stay away from it either, but I just wanted to viciously attack no matter what, right? Now, last game was different because we were obviously put in an extremely tough spot, and we kind of had to make something happen. But it kind of, it gave me some motivation. It was like, okay, maybe I can, work on this later on and get some more vicious attacking builds going on. I remember that I really liked playing 2-base all-ins and stuff. Overall, Zerg players have gotten a bit too good for that at the game. Like, everyone knows how to stop 2-base all-ins. Besides that, the meta is also to play roaches, which is extremely good against 2-base all-ins, but it's still, it's something to think about. Like, even if you don't necessarily win every game, if that's just the way you like to play, then maybe that's the way you should go. Now, I was trying to think of a 3rd reactor first build that would work well. The first idea that came into my mind was to do pretty much a version of the last game's build, which you didn't get to see come to full fruition, right? But it would be, instead of going for 2 medevacs with 14 Marines and a Widowmine, that's what last game was going to be, I would go for just 1 medevac and then make Hellions behind them, run them by. And then you can still go into either Liberators or the Battlecruiser or whatever you want your follow-up to be. Could be Speed Banshees as well. The main reason, by the way, if you guys are curious why, in the TVT I focus so much on Speed Banshees, but so far in the TVZ I haven't. It's because Zergs just have defense against Banshees by default with Queens, and they also make blind spores pretty much every game in every base, right? And I felt like I wouldn't be able to do as much with them, really. Like, sometimes I think it could be very nice. If you get into the macro game against Zerg, I think Speed Banshees are nice, because then you can stop roaches from wandering around all across the map. But since early on you want to do some damage, right? Like, you don't want Zerg economy to get out of hand, because, I mean, if you leave them alone, Zerg can make 70 drones in like 5 minutes off of 4 Zerglings, and if you don't punish them, you are dead. Like, they just have way too much stuff, right? So, ideally I have a build where I do something and then go into Speed Banshees. I'm not quite sure what that would look like, because they might not come out in time, but it's something to think about. But anyway, that's the reason why I don't go towards Speed Banshees as much against Zerg as I would do in the other matchups. Even against Protoss, I have been enjoying going for Speed Banshees. It has been the most successful against Terran by far, which is what I would have expected. But even against Protoss, it's quite nice, especially because everyone plays Blink. So there, you can definitely do some moves there when they have to blink after your Banshees and have observers everywhere. It's really not as easy. Now I'm going to click a couple of Hellions across the map. Fusion Core goes down as well, so my brain has decided that Battlecruisers are going to be the follow-up. And now this is going to be a very important moment. This is the kind of build where you definitely want to do some damage, because I spent so many minerals on this, and I'm also going to run by my Hellions, and yeah, I mean, we're going to have to do some big-time damage. I did manage to think of a very cool move here. You're going to see it right now. I know where the Overlord is. So I dodged the Overlord with my medevac, but not only the medevac, I'm also going to dodge it with my Hellions. So he just saw my Hellions retreat, and then I'm still gonna be in front of his base, which could be an incredibly powerful move. Like, let's say he sees the medevac. He might still not have seen the Hellions in time, right? Like, I could have an Overlord on this pillar, for example, but it would still be quite awkward for him to get his stuff into position so fast. So the medevac goes into the main. There's a lot of roaches here. That is bad news for us because roaches are the natural counter to this. I saw a lot of queens and lings in the main, so what I went for here is to just drop into the natural. It had two effects, right? First of all, we're going to guarantee ourselves a bunch of drone kills. Second of all, he came back with the roaches. As you can see, like, those roaches would have killed me, by the way. He doesn't know this, right? Well, maybe after the game he did, but at the moment he didn't notice. Those roaches would have killed me. It's a big weakness if we do this kind of builds with the drops, especially if you spend a lot of money on Hellions as well, because Hellions are so bad against roaches. Like, it might be one of the most absolutely disgustingly one-sided trades you can have in StarCraft. So it was very good. I mean, if I think about it now, maybe it would have been better to drop into the main, but it really would have depended on if he would have came back as well. If I dropped into the main, we would have killed a lot of drones, but if we didn't come back, we would have died to the roaches instantly. So, you know, it's kind of hard to make the decision there. Now, those Widow Mines, I think they killed a Ravager, actually. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they killed a Ravager, which is nice. Now, I got 2 more Widow Mines on the way as well. I kind of wish that those were burrowed in a better position, so that's a bit of a mistake by me. Now, the Battlecruiser just finished, and I'm not quite sure if you guys noticed, but I have my follow-up ready already. I went for the double engineering bay before the barracks. The reason why is because I wanted to hit a 1-1 timing. This is going to be beautiful. Look, I have to burrow the Widow Mines exactly as the Ravagers finish. Look at that. Okay, that was cool. I don't really know the timing of that. I just went off it by feeling, but I moved the SCVs away so the SCVs didn't get splashed, and we killed the Ravagers, and that was perfect. Now, Battlecruiser teleports across. We're just going to be targeting drones here. Hopefully, there's not too many queens. Sadly, he did show up with a good amount of queens already. I mean, we already killed 9 drones. No, actually, we killed a couple roaches, right? So maybe like 5 drones or so, and we killed the queen already. BC is probably not going to die, and now I'm going to set up for a really big timing later on. Now, ideally, what I have him do here is for him to max out on roaches, I think. Because I feel like with the BC, we should be able to defend an attack, especially because we're... Well, I wouldn't necessarily call it all in, but we're going to go for a really vicious timing attack after this. And then if he attacks us first, we should be able to defend. This could definitely go wrong, because if we attack and he just made a lot of units without attacking us, then we are going to be in trouble, right? So it's always a bit of a cat and mouse game, like who gets scared first, who decides to attack, whatnot. So I guess we're going to have to see how that plays out, but that was the idea for now. I actually thought my macro behind it was pretty decent. We did hit a little bit of a supply block now, but in all of the chaos, getting the E-base up and all the barracks and stuff, it really could have been worse. I think it's very hard to do stuff like that when you're being attacked. Now, it looked like those roaches did have speed. I could be wrong, but they moved kind of fast. So, yeah, you guys probably would have seen it already. To me, it did look like they have roach speed, so that would be a good sign for me. First tank is already out. It could be a potential really big attack at the front, so I decided to siege my tank a little bit further back. 1-1 is getting close to finishing. Now, at this point, I was starting to worry a little bit because my 1-1 was getting close to finishing, and I thought he would probably be going for, you know, a big roach attack, and we don't have enough army to attack already, so I went for the armory to make 2-2. And I started adding turrets so we wouldn't die against tunneling claw roaches, which we already saw him build in the last game as well. Now, what's nice about a BC is that you can just move it across and get some free scouting, right? Like, you can see where the creep is, you can probably see a base, and now we see corruptors. This, on one hand, it kind of surprised me because I feel like with his scout, he probably should have seen or realized that I was only going to make 1 BC. Against 1 BC, you really don't necessarily have to make corruptors. At the same time, let's say he didn't go for corruptors and I would have gone for a sneaky 2-star per BC, show up with 3, then he might have been screwed, right? So I think it's a safe choice, obviously, or at least that's how I felt. He should have been decently far ahead from that start because I traded all those units for... I don't know how many units I killed or how many drones I killed in total before the BC, maybe like 10 or so, but I lost a medevac, 8 marines, 6 Hellions for it. Then I showed up with a BC, obviously a big investment, and I killed 5 drones with it or so, which is also not that much for going all the way for a battlecruiser. Now, this was the moment where I really realized that we might be in a bit of trouble, and that's that he didn't actually make that many roaches. He went straight into Ling baiting, and that's exactly what you want, especially because and that is on me, of course, I kind of blind counter the roaches by making Marauders. Pro tip I can give to you guys, a lot of times if you play Marine Tank, you really want to be playing Marine Tank and not Marine Marauder Tank. Reason, Marauders are terrible against Zerglings. If you play against Terran, they're terrible against Marines. If you play against Protoss, they're terrible against Zealots. So a lot of times when you play Marine Tank, you really want to play pure Marine Tank. Here, the Marauders would be super good if he would go for Roaches. Against Lingbane, they're not going to be that good. You think they might be able to tank against the Banelings. In practice, it is not really the case. Like, you need to split anyway, else they trade efficiently. Like, if you split your units too much, they just die to Lings while your Marines are running away from the Banes, right? So it's, yeah, just an unfortunate situation here. Now, I got the feeling that since he was only making Ling Bane, he made a handful of Corruptors and a handful of Ravagers. It is not a crazy amount of gas that he spent. So I figured he would probably be going up to Hive. Oh, that was actually very unfortunate for me because those units, I saw that they stopped moving on the minimap. There I actually teleported my BC because teleport has the same hotkey as Tim. I really thought I clicked my units back to my army, but I just didn't click them far enough and they stopped. So that cost me probably about 10 supply of bio, which really is not that crazy, but you never, like, imagine in the last game if I lost 10 supply of bio for free, then all of a sudden we get crushed, right? Like, games can be very close like that. Now at this point, the reason why I'm not pushing forward more aggressively is just because I'm waiting for 2-2 to finish. That is the main reason. Zergs always want to surround you when you're pushing with Marine Tank. That's why I keep an enormous concave. If you're wondering why I'm not pushing forward with everything, is because he's going to try to surround me. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be a 3-sided surround. So it's going to be the front, the right side, and the left side. Here it was the front and the right side, as you can see. And then I'll have another layer of units that can surround his surround, basically. That is the ideal fight. If you make a big surround and he just attacks in the front, it's not as good. So I'm basically predicting his surround in advance. Now, we have arrived at max supply. He is also going to be maxed at this point for sure. And it looks like it was just a 2-sided surround, actually. So he came from the front and the left side. The fight here, I would say it was pretty good. I mean, I think I need a little bit more than that. I'm pretty sure we lost 2 tanks, which is going to be pretty painful. Remember what I said about having your tank count reset. Completely undesirable. But we still have 185 supply. We still have a good couple of tanks out, which is nice. And we have a lot of Marauders out here. Yeah, the biggest problem really is that he definitely went up to Hive already. That means a couple things. Vipers are going to be very strong, right? Blinding Cloud against tanks and bio. He could be going up to Ultras. Ultras are pretty much the end of Marine Marauder tank. The moment they get Ultras, you need to play it super careful, get Ghosts, Liberators, Planetary, stuff like that. So if Ultras finish, we're also screwed, and besides that, Adrenal Glands is also insanely good, but there are the Ultras. Now, even though you should theoretically be owned, here we're going to kill every single Corruptor, by the way. Even though you should theoretically be owned by the Ultras, the moment they come out, it's very unlikely they have all the upgrades. So here, he probably either doesn't have armor or speed. Now, I can tell he doesn't have the speed, so he probably has the armor upgrade. We managed to kill a couple of those. And the moment the Ultras are out, I can tell you guys that we need to go for it 100%. There's no more backing off. If we back off, he gets too rich, he gets too many Ultras with Adrenal Glands, and then all of a sudden we're absolutely screwed. So you have to keep going for it. As you can see, I'm targeting the Ultras. They are not even really getting to shoot right now, so that's really good for us. The Lynx are surrounding us, but they're having a hard time getting through. Now, the Ultras for now are completely gone. I don't know how many more he's gonna have. Now, I just want you to remember that moment where I lost 10 supply of bio right now, guys. Remember that moment. Could have made a massive difference here, right? I could have been able to push through a lot easier. Now, here there was an Ultra on the flank, so we had to go back. Now, his army is starting to get a little bigger, but we are still at the point where I might have a small chance, depending on how good his eco has been behind it. We're going to be landing our 4th base. Our supply, I was going to say, is approaching max. I don't mean it's actually approaching max. It's just, it's reasonable, right? Now, he has a lot of Banelings. He has a lot of Ultras. He has the Infestor as well. If I look at my base, there is Lings in my 3rd base, and that is the sign that this series is over. It had 185 supply, and that's going to be it for my run today. We beat a very strong Korean Terran. We almost beat one of the best Zerg players in the world, and we did it with a lot of flavor, a lot of style, a lot of cool builds. Didn't manage to qualify, but like I said in the intro, that was not as much my intention as just cheesing a bunch of Korean pros. In that, I definitely succeeded. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all for the next one. Adios.